In our top story this half an hour, the Department of Homeland Security ending the catch and release policy next week. Secretary Kevin McAleenan says that the department will no longer allow migrant families to go from Border Patrol facilities into the U.S. population while they await court hearings. Families that claim asylum will be brought to Mexico. Others will be sent back to their country of origin. Joining me right now is the president of Colombia, Ivan Duque. And Mr. President, it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's a great pleasure for me to be here.
Have you seen any impact from the border issues in America?
Well, not really. I mean, when we evaluate the migration policies throughout the hemisphere, each country has its own policies and it faces its own characteristics. And in our case, as you well know, we have had a migration shock from the Venezuelan border. We have received more than 1.4 million Venezuelans that have left the country because of the impoverishment and because of the dictatorship that takes place there. We have been able to treat them well, to allow them to access to opportunities. But obviously, when you have such a migration shock, it's very hurtful. But I think each country has the right and the instruments to face each of the migration policies.
Let me ask you about Venezuela, because the U.S. allies are invoking a treaty to pressure Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro. You're seeking international sanctions on Venezuela to protect the whole region. Tell me about that. What do you want to see done?
Well, Maria, first of all, let me just, call things by their name. Maduro is sponsoring and harboring terrorists in their territory. And that's only comparable to what we saw in the 2000s when the Taliban regime was supporting al-Qaeda. So what he does is exactly the same. And in the other hand, the way he has brutalized his people, it's only compared to what Slobodan Milosevic did. So that's why we've called things by their name. Now, we have not been an aggressor country, but we have to protect our borders. And I think the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance that was voted yesterday was a way in which countries first recognize all the things that Maduro is doing against the Colombian people and the threat he represents for the region. So the message was clear. If you ever dare to make an attack, if you ever dare to become an offender to Colombia, the whole region will protect Colombia. So I think that was very important, and it also reaffirms the commitment of many countries to isolate diplomatically the dictatorship of Nicolas Maduro.
It sounds like you are very much in alignment with the United States as well.
Yes, we are, and actually we share values and we share principles. The United States and Colombia signed the Inter-American Democratic Charter. We believe democracy has to be defended. And Maduro has annihilated independent powers. He has destroyed free media. He has destroyed any sort of economic development in Venezuela. Now people are so impoverished that people just want to go out of the country. Wow. You have lost 4 million people in less than 3 years. So we have been, in Colombia, supporters of the Venezuelan people, but at the same time, we have denounced the brutality and the crimes that have been committed by Nicolas Maduro.
What leadership. Thank you for that. Have you been in touch with the administration in the U.S. about a side trade deal, a bilateral partnership with the United States?
We have a trade deal. I mean, we have a very close relationship. And I think the trade deal that was signed in 2012 has been very important for both countries. Although we have a trade deficit with the United States, we have very important United States investment in Colombia and in many sectors. And the rise of foreign direct investment in the last semester, which was above 24%, are one of the triggers of Colombia's high growth this year. I mean, we compare it to Latin America, that is going to grow 0.5%. Colombia is going to grow above 3%, which is above the regional and the world average. So we have to keep the investment going. And I think the United States has been not only a strategic partner, but we also see our relationship as a relationship of trade and investment.
Well, you've been focused on economic growth. You passed and are moving toward corporate tax cuts as well. Tell us about your tax legislation and its impact.
Well, for many years, what happened in Colombia is that the state wanted to spend more, but every single time they passed a check to the private sector. So when I assumed office, I said, well, we have to make a change. In 2017, we grew at 1.4%. So we made the tax reform, so we reduced the aggregate taxation on small, medium, and large-sized corporations. Out of that, we got more investment. The first trimesters of our administration, we grew to 2.8, and this year, as I said before, we're going to grow above 3%. So the signals are clear. People can invest. Colombia is seen now as the place in Latin America to invest. And at the same time, we have deregulated many sectors. We have eliminated red tape. And we have made very wise decisions on startups. For example, zero income tax for the first 7 years for startups. obviously they have to work on a minimum amount of investment and a minimum amount of jobs to be created. So we're seeing that dynamism in the economy, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Isn't it interesting to see the difference when you look at what you're doing in terms of policies to encourage economic growth for everybody versus the socialism practices in Venezuela? I mean, at one point, Venezuela was one of the most vibrant places in the world in terms of their economy.
Well, you know, when I compare Colombia and Venezuela, obviously Venezuela has a dictatorship, but I've always tried to differentiate two type of leaders in Latin America. The demagogues, who always, promise the Holy Land, and then they end up having disasters, and the pedagogues, which are the ones who tell the people what is the right thing to do, even if it's not popular at the beginning. And in our case, I think the transformation of Colombia demonstrates that it's through sound policies, lower deficits, more investment, supporting the private sector that we can make a difference.
What a great way to put it. Thank you for that. All right, we want to talk about the environment. You are here at the UN General Assembly. The world is watching those pictures of the Amazon. You had the 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg pointing the finger at world leaders. She blamed them for ignoring climate change. Here's what she said yesterday.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. How dare you?
Wow, what a performance she put on yesterday in terms of her feelings, blaming yourself and other leaders across the world. What do you say to that?
Well, I made a speech yesterday. First of all, we called for a global action on protecting the tropical forest, and then I participated on the Climate Change Summit. And I think we have to pass from speeches to actions. When you look at a country like Colombia, Colombia only represents 0.4% of the global green gases emissions. We have the 6th cleanest energy matrix in the world. We have 50% of the world páramos, and we have 35% of our continental soil as Amazonic. So those facts might say, well, Colombia is not part of the problem. However, we all have to engage. And that's the reason why we're making an energy transition in Colombia. That's why we want to get to 10% of non-conventional renewables in 2022. We're going to get to 20% in 2030. That's why we have got a deforestation 17% in the first year of our administration. That's the reason why we're pushing to electric vehicle, not only the bill, but the implementation. That's why we're talking about civil pastures when it comes to sustainable cattle in Colombia. So we're making big efforts. And as I said yesterday, climate change is the biggest issue of our time. We must all work together, and we must also involve the private sector. So let me give you just one example, Maria. In Colombia, we decided that you can deduct 50% in the corporate income tax any investment that you have made on energy efficiency and renewable energy. So we believe that the whole amount of policies that we have implemented are producing the impact. Colombia is highly committed to the Paris Agreement, and we really want to be carbon neutral by 2050.
Wow. And do you think that the world is aligned against China and its practices when it comes to pollution in the air?
Well, I think the whole world must recognize that there are two realities. There was the reality of many countries that got to be developed without of a permanent environmental conscience, and now you have developing countries that ask the right to develop, but they have to do it in harmony with the protection of the environment. No development can be reached today if you're affecting the environment. So I think the whole call, not only to China or Colombia or Brazil, to any country in the world, even the G7, is that we need to harmonize what we do on economic development with the protection on the environment, the protection on the forest, the protections on the oceans. So I think now there's a world conscience, and we're also making a big bet. And it's that we train the kids in schools with the ethics of the 21st century,
early,
which means we all have to be conscious on how to act and protect the environment.
You've obviously got a great grasp on growth and leading your country. What can you say to investors about corruption and those people who want to make sure that this is something that is watched and handled and reversed?
When I was working at the Inter-American Development Bank in my previous life, I remember there was a thinker at the World Bank who said corruption equals monopoly of information plus discretionality, less transparency. So what do we need to do? Eliminate the monopolies of information inside government, eliminate so much discretionality, and increase the levels of transparency. What can be an instrumental tool? Technology. So with blockchain, with technology, with aggregated databases, we can be more efficient so that everybody could scrutinize the way the state contracts or how the state acts. Yeah. So in Colombia, we've moved in that direction to have more transparency. We've also issued a bill so that every single high official in government has to make public their tax filings, so that people can monitor and scrutinize how they have behaved, how their assets have behaved while they've been in office. And also, what we want to do this year is to be able to blockchain to identify maybe irregular movements in contractual assignation, or when we see that there are people that are not filing the information they should. And that makes us more efficient to fight corruption. And we're also promoting, as Colombia, inside the UN, that we should have a global anti-corruption court, but specifically to tackle the intra-regional corruption schemes like the one we saw with some of the companies that created big scandals in Latin America in the past year.
Really important insights from you. Mr. President, thank you.
Maria, has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us.
I hope you can visit us in Colombia pretty soon.
I would love that. We will follow up. Ivan Duque joining us, the President of Colombia.